Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we can start our webinar because we have 100 participants already. Dear participants of our webinar, my name is Nazila Ismailova. I'm the Senior Project Coordinator of Organic Trade for Development, financed by the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs of Switzerland and implemented by IFOAM Organics International in consortium with Helvetia Swiss Intercooperation and the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, FIBL. IFOAM Organics International is a membership-based organization with over 700 members, all working towards the leading change organically. We do so through the regional bodies and the sector platforms. And in fact, one of the regional bodies is IFOAM Organics Europe, which is facilitating this webinar today. This webinar is entitled to discussion on the management of pesticides residues management in organic products within the regulatory framework. So, without the further information, I would like to introduce my co-moderator, Clara Garrone, the project and the partnership officer at IFOAM Organics Europe, who will share a bit more today and introduce our dearest trainer. So over to you, Clara.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. So nice to see that this webinar has raised so much interest. I'm Clara, and I will share with you a few slides to present you IFOAM Organics Europe and a little bit more about part of what we will be discussing today. So just 1 second, and I'm selecting the screen. Where is it? Sorry, this is not. 1 moment. Well, it's not working. We did a test, but it's not important. Anyways, I will just present it as it is. So IFOAM Organics Europe, as Nazila was anticipating, is the regional body of the wider movement of IFOAM Organics International. And we also are a membership organization that represents the European organic movement with more than 200 members. So our objective is to promote a fair organic movement all over Europe by lobbying both at the European and at the national level. So our strengths are indeed advocacy, political and technical network, and we are headed in Brussels, where 80% of the legislation is decided. Today we will be touching the topic of pesticides use and contamination. And I just wanted to put a little bit of framework, since part of what Lea, our expert and in-house consultant, will be presenting later, are the results of a project that ran from November 2020 until 2023, entitled Ensuring a Favorable Environment for Organic Operators through EU Legislative Frameworks. And the objective is to lobby for and research for EU policies and regulations that support the organic operators that want to produce food without the use of pesticides. The total cost of this project was a little bit more than 200,000 euros, and we were partnering with FIBL, which is still, again, the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, and it was the scientific partner. So Lea Bauer, that, as I mentioned already, is the expert in regulation and in-house consultant for organic at IFOAM Organics Europe, will be going a little bit more into detail about the results of this project and much more. So I simply leave the floor to her, and I'm sure she will take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara, for this introduction. Welcome everyone, the whole audience in this webinar. I hope we can provide you with very valuable information. And as Clara introduced, the main topic is today the handling management of pesticide residues in organic products. However, according to agenda, we have also a session about the regulatory update, touching a few topics beyond pesticide residues. So I would like to share my screen with you, and I would like to ask my colleagues to tell me if everything goes well with my presentation and if you can see it correctly. Okay.
Yes.
So today in this webinar, I would like to give you an update on the EU organic regulation and what is the status quo with the EU recognition of CBs according to the new regulation. Some members of the audience asked about a bit of update about the main changes regarding product categories under the new EU organic regulation. And I would like to talk a bit about some specificities of requirements, and mainly additional requirements for third countries. And then in the second half of our webinar, I would turn towards the huge topic of pesticide residues, starting with a bit of introduction of our position paper that we issued on this summer. So it is quite difficult to talk about the EU organic regulation in 10 minutes, because probably you already have an impression about that this new set of EU organic legislation is quite complex and difficult. And the rules are split into many pieces of regulations. So I will go through quite quickly through these slides. However, I put every single pieces of regulations in the slides in order to give you a good source where you can check them. And in the end, I will also talk about what other guidelines and summaries and collection of these regulations are available. So, you know, from the 1st of January 2022, a new EU organic regulation is in force. This is the famous 848 regulation that we call as Basic Act. This provides all the basic rules on organic production and labeling of organic products. However, quite recently in 2023, another regulation was published, which is quite independent from the rest of the regulatory framework. It is called the Lex Specialis, and it sets the rules on the labeling of organic pet food. Because through the legislative process, it was realized that this tiny topic was missed from the regulatory work. Beyond this basic act, there are many pieces of legislation that are so-called secondary legal acts. There are two types of these. One is delegated acts, which are responsible for supplementing or amending the basic act in certain non-essential elements of it. So these are a kind of complementary acts. And there are implementing acts which set uniform conditions for implementing requirements that are included in the Basic Act. How it is structured. All these secondary acts can be grouped among the main topics. These cover three main areas, which are production and labeling, the organic control system, And the third one is international trade. In my summary, I will follow this structure. So I grouped the pieces of regulation according to these three main topics. So let's start with production and labeling. After the Basic Act was published, several secondary delegated regulations were issued and published in the official journal of the European Union. Basically, in this first year, correcting those rules that were not properly touched by the basic regulation, because the legislators realized that there are some, let's say, mistakes in the Basic Act. So this first one, issued in 2020, covered really tiny technical issues like feeding of bees or aquaculture juvenile production, or how we can produce organic sprouted seeds under the organic regulation. And still in 2020 and 21, some additional delegated regulations were published. One on the regulation of how can the organic sector use in conventional and non-organic plant reproductive material, or this 642 regulation covered the labeling rules on compound feed products and mixtures of fodder seeds, which are used also as plant reproductive materials. Simply the reason was that these issues were not properly covered by the Basic Act. Then another correction was published in 2021, covering already the first delegated regulation, which was on sprouted seeds. It had to be still modified, and there are some also technical regulation rules on aquaculture production, which is a very important piece of regulation. It was this 474 published in 2024 on specific requirements on seedlings and other plant reproductive material, because the Basic Act already covered this issue in its Annex 2 Part 1. However, some plant reproductive material were not regulated properly. Another delegated regulation was published on how to handle catastrophic circumstances. What are the criteria to identify circumstances as being catastrophic, and which allow member states to introduce some exceptional production rules. And also in 2021, one piece of regulation was published, which also somehow connected to plant reproductive material. This is the definition and the criteria of the use of the so-called organic heterogeneous material. It's quite a specific piece of regulation, because this category of reproductive material has not existed even in horizontal regulations before. So it is the first time when the organic regulation sets the criteria how we can define and use such reproductive material. And some additional and complementary exceptions had to be allowed due to Russia's invasion on Ukraine, because it resulted in serious disruptions of trade and the supply of organic protein feed. So that's why the Commission decided to define this situation as a catastrophic circumstance, which allows certain additional derogations, which are normally allowed in organic production. So let's turn towards implementing regulation. Several implementing regulatory acts exist in the field of production and labeling. One is about retroactive recognition of previous periods as part of the conversion period, which might be quite interesting for third countries, I have the impression. This piece of regulation 464 defines detailed production rules in organic production on livestock keeping, aquaculture production, processed food and feed, and also sets transitional provisions from the switch to the new regulation from the old one. Several further implementing regulations exist. A very important one is this 1165 regulation, because it is a separate piece where, how to say, the old annexes are included from the old EU regulation, which means that here we can find all the lists of the authorized substances and products which are allowed in organic production as inputs. And it is important to follow how this regulation is changing, because it is revised and updated by the Commission on a regular basis. And still already this year, there was a piece of legislation 121, which is the first amendment, so the first expansion of these lists of authorized inputs based on the assessment of new requests to be included in these input lists. So let's turn towards control. This is the other big topic which is regulated through delegated and implementing acts in addition to the basic regulation. There are several important pieces of legislation which cover new requirements for groups of operators. It is also an issue which might be very important in third countries, more important than in EU member states, because we know that traditionally certain groups of products have always been produced by grower groups. However, this topic was never regulated in the old EU regulation. With the new one, the Commission wanted to give detailed rules also within the EU, but they wanted to keep in their hands how we control and allow the functioning of such groups outside the territory of the EU. I do not want to go into details about how the model of certificate was regulated, because originally it was in the Basic Act, but was for certain reasons modified by several secondary acts. We have a big piece of regulation, 1691, on detailed record keeping requirements for operators. And we have one, this 771, which is very important for control bodies and control authorities, because it gives detailed requirements on how official control tasks have to be implemented and done. A bit of regulation was published on a template for a complementary certificate, which is not important for this group, I guess, because it is a supplementary document that has to accompany consignments that will go to the US market. Another piece of legislation here about the model of certificate. And going towards implementing regulation, which I mentioned that these are the ones which gives tiny technical details on how to implement requirements set by the Basic Act. There is an important one, 279, on controls. So this is also quite an an important and detailed regulation how to carry out controls. There are some methodology on official investigation, but also about reporting obligations towards the Commission, and which is very important also from third countries' point of view, is how, you can find in this regulation how to set up the basis of the national catalog of measures in case of non-compliances, which we very simple call within the sector as sanction catalogs. These other two implementing regulations are not so important, but included in the this list for being complete. It is about submission of information by CBs, but also only referring to EU control bodies, and about the issuance of the certificates in electronic format. And the last implementing regulation on control was the one which sets rules on how to report results of official investigations when some non-compliances are detected by a new electronic system which is integrated in Office. So I think which is the very important topic for this group is international trade. Because the EU Commission, as probably everyone knows here in this circle, that switched the import regime from being under equivalence to being under compliance. So everyone knows now, after 2 years of implementation of the regulation, that from the 1st of January 2025, all CBs and operators outside of the EU who would like to be involved in imports of organic products to the EU market will have to be recognized under compliance. So they have to apply word by word the production and control requirements of the EU organic regulation. However, regarding criteria of recognition and some additional criteria of production as well, the Commission put in place several rules and requirements concerning imports and concerning international trade. So probably this set of regulations will be the most important for you to know where to find them. It is still quite complex and difficult to follow. So all the information are split into various delegated regulations and implementing regulations. So for example, you can see here that still in 2021, there was a piece of regulation separately setting criteria for the recognition of control authorities and control bodies working in third countries, and some criteria concerning the withdrawal of such recognition. However, there are some additional ones which are still about the same. For example, quite shortly after, a new piece of regulation was issued on detailed procedural requirements for the recognition of control authorities and control bodies. Then a new regulation was put in place for detailed rules on how and in what structure information has to be sent by third countries to the European Commission for the purpose of the supervision of control bodies and control authorities. This piece of regulation here that you can see in this slide is less relevant for you because it's rather for EU competent authorities. It's quite a complex piece of regulation, which more linked to the basic regulation 625 on official controls. So it is about how the EU has to handle some specific product categories and consignments that are coming into the EU market. but carrying on with import requirements, there are some additional criteria on how the certificate of inspection, the so-called COI, has to be issued, detailed procedures and checks that has to be done by the control authorities and control bodies before issuance are also included in this act. There was one piece of regulation published due to the need for some transitional provisions for how these COIs can be issued by Ukrainian control bodies and control authorities, respecting the difficulties that they are facing now due to Russia's invasion and some administrational difficulties. As by the basic regulation and the secondary legislation covering controls within the EU, the electronic certificate issuance system was put in place, which also requires the use of qualified electronic seals on official documents issued. This somehow had to be reflected on also in regulation covering third countries. So for this reason, a separate piece of legislation was issued in 2022. And last but not least, also several implementing regulations were introduced covering international trade, for example, on the model of certificate and the list of third countries. Also, you know, until the transition period ends in 1st January 2025, there is still a need to update the list of third countries as well as the list of the control authorities and control bodies in third countries, recognized still for the purpose of equivalence. These lists are regularly updated from time to time. And yeah, another implementing regulation, again, touching the introduction of the use of qualified electronic seal for the issuance of organic certificates, because not only the COI need to be issued by an electronic system, but also the basic operator certificates from a certain time on. I'm checking how much time we have, but I would like to give a short update of the status quo of EU recognition of CBs according to the new regulations, so already under the compliance regime. In October, we received some updates from the Commission, how it goes. As probably you might have an impression that under the equivalence regime, currently altogether 65 third country control authorities and control bodies are listed by the Commission. From these number of organizations, they received applications from 39 up to now, and they consider the submission of these dossiers finalized and to be complete in case of 20 CAs and CBs only. So the Commission is constantly complaining about the poor quality of dossiers and that several questions and supplementations have to be asked for. So they always emphasize that they see a serious risk of disruption of import if this assessment and submissions of dossiers are not accelerated a bit. For your information, we received the info that if a control body and control authority wants to operate under the compliance regime for the 1st of January 2025, the complete assessment by the Commission of their dossier has to be finalized until June 2024. So they are really encouraging control bodies to submit their dossiers and to finalize them as soon as possible. And also regarding this assessment and imports and the well-functioning of the new system from the perspective of the operators as well, there is another topic which is very relevant, that probably you know that, as I mentioned, the lists of those substances and products that are authorized as inputs that can be used in organic production are all listed in the regulation 1165. And it has dedicated Annex 6 for those substances that are allowed to be used in third countries, because the Commission realized that there is a need for a separate list, because in this respect there are some specificities in third countries. So, and the requests to include substances and products in this list have to be submitted by control authorities and control bodies that operate in third countries. The submission is followed by a detailed assessment of ECTOP. And so this process also takes time. Until now, only one request was handled and assessed by ECTOP, which is ethylene for use in pineapple production in third countries. And this request, for your information, was submitted this year in spring, and the assessment has been just finalized. So the regulation, which will include already this substance, will be published only next year spring. So let's say this process took at least 1 year to be finalized. We know about some new requests covering 20 microbial products and 5 natural substances. However, the sector also fears that due to some time constraints, the filling up this Annex 6 will cause also some disruptions or difficulties in certain third countries. So in addition to the recognition of CBs and CAs, there are negotiations going on with those countries that have been on the list of recognized third countries. According to the old regulation, we know that these three trade agreements have been finalized in case of 3 third countries: Chile, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. And with all the rest of them, the renegotiations are still taking place. So let's go to the second big topic of this first part of our agenda. These are the main changes regarding product categories under the new regulation. Probably you know that there have been quite a big change in the scope of the regulation, which means that a bit different product categories are under the new regulation that was handled by the old regulation. Here you can see the list which are included in the basic act to be under the scope, which cover unprocessed plants and plant products. Here the regulation includes the plant reproductive material as well, livestock and unprocessed livestock products, algae and unprocessed aquaculture products, processed agricultural products, including aquaculture products as well for use as food and feed. In addition to food products, also wine is a separate category, and which is quite a new thing under the new regulation, that some other products which are listed in a separate annex are also under the scope, however not covered by the previous categories. These are some specific products that basically derive from agriculture. However, very often their use is not being as to be used as food or feed. There is one odd category added to this list, which is sea salt and other salts. The whole organic sector has quite a big problem with the inclusion of this product category because, of course, it is not an agricultural product. And just to update you in this topic, this year, the Commission put a proposal on the table about detailed production rules of sea salt and other salts. However, in the course of the legislative process, already the specific European Parliament committee, and after also the plenary rejected the proposal of the Commission. For various reasons, but they heard our voice because also IFOAM Organics Europe had the position that detailed production rules should not be included in the organic regulation because it's this whole product category and the processing techniques go in opposition of what are said by the principles of organic farming and production. So finally, it was rejected. So now we have the situation that in the EU, we have no harmonized rules for the production of organic salt. However, member states have the right to develop national regulation on that. So these are about the product categories, and about the detailed rules. You will find everything in this set of regulation that I presented to you, just to emphasize a few big changes. Regarding production, in addition to this change in the scope of the regulation, the biggest ones are that there is this new category of organic heterogeneous material that can be used in organic production as propagation material. The animal production rules have been expanded significantly because now there are some additional requirements in poultry production, and some new age categories are covered now, which have been not under the scope or not regulated in detail by the old regulation. And we have some new detailed rules on rabbit production and deer production. Regarding processing, the big invention now is that we have the definition of organic flavorings that can be used in organic production, and we have detailed rules on how to produce them, and that the natural flavorings can be used only with huge restrictions. There are some techniques that the use of them are more restricted than before. These are the ion exchange and adsorption techniques, which can be used now only in baby food and wine production. And the big change in the new regulation that regarding processing, there will be a detailed list of cleaning and disinfection products that are allowed to be used in processing facilities. This is a big challenge for the Commission to tackle this task, and due to some time constraints, again, they postponed the introduction of this detailed list until the 1st of January 2026. So that these are my updates on product categories. And now going to the last piece of summary on regulatory update. This is about specific requirements on third countries. Probably you are aware that beyond the requirements that are set by the basic and secondary legislation, the Commission is very keen on putting additional control and surveillance over imports, because they see it as a quite problematic topic within the EU, as they faced more quality problems. Let's say clearly that they find more residue problems in imported products than in products produced within the EU. It's not the same considering each third country, but there are some countries and product categories about which, based on information provided to the Commission through the office system, there are several notifications from time to time repeating and having complaints about the same kinds of residue problems. So that is the reason why the Commission put in place increased control and reporting measures for certain imported products. These additional requirements are set by a guidance document, or rather a letter that was sent to all CBs and CAs within and outside of the EU, and it covers, so it is valid only for a 1-year period. I'm emphasizing this because on the basis of the new office notifications, probably there will be a new guidance document covering other countries, possibly, and other product categories. Now, as far as I see, these countries are not the ones that our audience here in this webinar sitting. But just to be informed that probably this next year it will change. This guidance document includes several enforcement measures or of higher level of control tasks to be done and carry out. For example, there are higher sampling percentages than in normal cases, and there are detailed methodology guidances on how sampling and analysis have to be done in these countries and in case of these product categories. Also, there are very strict rules on how the issuance of the certificate of inspection has to be done, what kind of pre-issuance checks have to be carried out. And there are also detailed reporting requirements included in this guidance document regarding, of course, non-compliance cases. So, after this huge pack of legislation, and I hope I could demonstrate a bit how complex this issue here, I would like to show you some help that can, these documents are supporting operators as well as CBs and CAs how to go through this organic legislation and how to find the relevant information. IFOAM Organics Europe has developed guidelines to the EU organic regulation. It is an IT tool. It's free to use for our members. However, everyone can buy access for 1-year periods, and it puts together all the relevant requirements set by the different pieces of regulations according to certain categories in one chapters. And it's can be also a help that when the EU regulation refers to other EU legislation, so let's say horizontal legislation, there are links provided in the text that directly lead to you in the relevant chapter of the horizontal legislation. There is a Commission webpage available on the legislation for the organic sector. Here, this list really follows the structure and logic that I put in my slides in this presentation. And quite an important document. Also, the Commission's frequently asked questions on organic rules document, because it gives guidelines on how to interpret various requirements of the regulations. It is also grouped in thematic chapters, and it is regularly updated and expanded with new topics. The latest release of this document is from this summer, and we were told by the Commission that also end of November or at the beginning of December, it will be updated again. So now we are over this first big part of our agenda. So I would like to give the floor to the audience to have questions. I stop sharing my screen for a while.
Thank you. Maybe, Leah, we can start addressing the two questions that have been asked through the Q&A chat. I don't know if you can see them.
Yes.
And
yes, I can see them.
I would suggest, since we have 5 minutes before the break, we just go through the two questions, and then for more articulated question, we can devote the final part of the webinar, if you agree.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have a first question about, can a processor or trader be a member of a group? It is quite an important question because it was the biggest concern of already existing grower groups, because under the new EU organic regulation, it is not possible. So the group can involve only primary producers, so farmers, which can be also aquaculture producers, but only farmers. I would like to raise your attention to a very nice webinar that was held also by IFOAM Organics International on grower groups recently. And I think on their web page, there is a link to the webinar materials and also the presentation that was given, when you can really find the detailed rules on grower groups under the EU regulation with explanations as well. So thank you for the question. I would go to the second one. Could you please let me know if there is already a list of those authorized CBs in third countries? Of course, this list is constantly available, but still under the equivalence regime. If you check my slides under international trade, you can see those pieces of delegated regulations that include these lists. According to the new regime, so under compliance, the new list will be released for the first time after 1st of January 2025. So I hope this is answering your question. The next one is, until cleaning and disinfection list is approved, it is true that no restriction is applied in organic processing or in warehouses to use cleaning and disinfection products. It is not completely true, because within the EU, member states themselves provide for the list which products they allow, however, only on national level. So we need to have a transition from this system until the new EU-wide lists are put in place in 2 years. The Commission first made a survey among member states how many cleaning and disinfection substances and products are allowed to be used now, and they found out that almost 2,000 items on these lists, if we put the member state lists together. So it is quite a big task to have the assessment, and that is why the postponement was put in place. The next question, sorry, is there a deadline for the certificate to be given? Please, if you could add some more details to your question, what kind of certificate you mean? I see that on the chat you added that, is there any deadline for the certificate to be given? Because it happens that certificates came after 2 months when it was too late. What kind of certificate do you mean about operator certificate or the certificate of inspection? So the COIs that are issued for consignments, certificate for the organic products. Yes, but I think I don't understand completely the questions. Could you please define a bit more what, is it possible to let the audience intervene, not only the
Yes,
chat,
yes, I can.
Because some clarification is needed, what the question is specifically about. Is it
I gave the possibility to intervene to the
Thank you so much, Clara.
So you can simply unmute yourself. If you manage. Tuzanka Juki. Maybe I'm sorry already for my pronunciation. You can speak if you want to compliment. Otherwise, you can keep this question for later, and I would go with the last question from Alessio Adamiano, and then
okay, it's also fine.
We keep this question for later.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is there any limit specified by the EU Commission for the presence of pesticide residues and heavy metals in organic products? No, no thresholds are implemented, and it is not even the will of the Commission to have such a limitation or thresholds. At the moment, every detection, not depending what is the value, has to be investigated and handled. And Clara, I just saw one other question a bit before. Is it possible to use synthetic minerals resembling those produced by biomineralization process as calcium carbonate in mollusk in organic farming? Synthetic minerals, I hope I understand correctly, but if you mean there are some input substances that are allowed in organic products that are basically can be found in nature, in natural form, however, can be also produced by synthesization practices. And there is no difference between the two. So how it was produced is not regulated. In case of some substances, there are some restrictions added in the list that you can find in the regulation 1165, and probably it defines more specifically from what sources that certain substance can come. However, where there are no restrictions, it can both derive from production or from natural sources as well. Oh, I can see that many other questions arrived in the meantime.
Shall we call it a break anyways, and we keep them for later? Or
yes, of course, let us let Leah to have a break.
yeah.
Thank you. Maybe I can check the questions and find out if they can structured in a certain way, and I can answer the questions, maybe some of them together.
Exactly. So
yeah.
and we will see each other in 5 or 10 minutes, Clara. But
But we say 10, but we need to acknowledge that we are 10 minutes late also for the end. How do you feel about it?
yeah, I think if we see each other at 10:10.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 11:10. Is it okay?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So
Thanks.
we will see everyone in a 10 minutes or already in 12 minutes. So see you later. Thank you. Okay, shall we continue? I think everybody here.
Cecilia, can I quickly answer the questions that I checked during the break, or should we rather put it in the end?
Yeah, sure, whenever you feel comfortable.
Maybe it's better if we touch them because they belong to this first part and then go quickly to
At least some part of the questions.
Okay, so the first one, there was rather a comment on the Commission promise about the consolidated version, and that it's not happening actually, and quite complex and absurd, that we have difficulties with finding the right requirements in the right piece of regulation. It's completely right. The Commission told that the consolidated version of 848 will include always only delegated acts amending the basic acts, so not the delegated acts supplementing, and neither implementing acts. So these are completely handled separately, and it makes it even more difficult that some of them are also amended later. So yeah, it's completely right. It's quite crazy that it's already a big challenge to navigate among this huge pile of regulations, and it's quite challenging both for operators and CBs, I think, and even for authorities. There was a question about possible derogations. They are not specific in third countries. They are the same as in the EU. And according to the new regulation, possible derogations are quite limited. And the aim of the Commission is to slowly eliminate them all. So in most cases, you will find an end date of possible derogations. For specific cases, there is the possibility to qualify a situation as catastrophic circumstances, and then also third countries have possibilities to set derogations with very strict criteria and rules. There was a question about if white collecting operators can be included in grower groups. Yes, because it is categorized as agricultural productions, so it is possible. There was a question about heavy metal testing in import consignments. It is not required specifically by the Commission. In this guidance document also, the Commission emphasizes that consignments have to be tested for pesticide residues, including ETO. There was also a question about India that I have to find it because it was a specific one. In India, many CBs are de-recognized for category A. And is there any update when they can be recognized? Yes, we know that the recognition was withdrawn in many cases regarding the piece of regulation that demonstrated this. Immediately after, there was a correction published because one of these CBs were re-established to be included in the list. But we have unfortunately no information if these CBs can reapply or there are some corrective measures that can be implemented. Possibly they can reapply already under the compliance regime. But unfortunately, from the Commission, we have not received information which are those 39 CBs who applied already. And finally, I understood, I hope correctly, the question about the issuance of the certificates. It was about operator certificates. If there is a deadline, when it has to be issued after the request. I think there is no deadline set by the EU regulation. However, the CB's procedures must cover this under their accredited system. because, of course, when an operator registers with the system, with the control system, there is a time limit within the procedures of the CB. When the first inspection has to take place, then the EU regulation requires that it has to be repeated every year. There are some exceptions in the new regulation, but this is the basis. And then possibly after a while, there is a time limit for the issuance of the certificate as well. However, I know from experience that it can be affected by several factors. For example, the CB can also implement procedures in case when an operator is not paying fees and, for example, maintains the certificate even in cases when it can be already issued. So I think it's rather an internal procedure. Yeah, I don't know if I think there were no additional questions, but please, if you have others after the next session, you will also have a possibility to ask. So can we proceed with the presentation and go into details of our position paper and residue handling, right? I already... Okay. So I hope you can see my screen again. Somebody could confirm.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Clara. So Clara already told a few words about our sector project that was carried out by IFOAM Organics Europe. It was on the pesticide use and contamination topic and already closed in December last year. However, after closing the project, our activities on advocating for harmonization and other issues regarding management of residues in organics products continued also in 2023. The main objective of our project was to come to a common approach of the organic sector, how to deal with pesticide residue findings, of course, in line with the new organic regulation. But it was very important to have some results before 2025, because the Commission will issue a report on the implementation of the current requirements and regulations, and may think about a possible legislative proposal for more harmonization if needed. Our project objectives were mainly to understand what is the level of pesticide presence and contamination in our environment, of course, that affect the food and farming sector, including organic production, of course, to get a picture on how competent authorities, control bodies and control authorities deal with pesticide presence currently, and to reach a harmonized legislative framework and implementation within the organic sector as a whole. We also wanted to get input for a better integration of the IFOAM principles of organic farming into other legislative frameworks that cover the use of pesticides. So, of course, there are some direct outcomes from the project with close cooperation with FIBL, as Clara mentions. We produced several studies, reports, and documents The most comprehensive one is a huge study on the presence of pesticides in the environment and the ways of transition into food, of course, focusing on organic food. We produced a policy brief, also quite an extensive report on contaminants that can be found in organic food products. We also produced, together with FIBL, a report based on a questionnaire that was sent to more than 200 control bodies and control authorities. We prepared 6 hypothetical residue cases, and we asked them in a quite detailed way how they would handle these cases. And we made a big summary and comparison in a report. And also FIBL carried out a pilot study on possible spray drift in a very specific venue, because it was carried out in a vineyard area where 5 small organic vineyards were surrounded by many conventional vineyards. So these documents and reports are all accessible through the links that I embedded in this presentation slide. And as the final outcome of the project, IFOAM Organics Europe also issued a position paper this summer, giving an overview of the outcomes of the project and giving some guidelines on implementation of the regulation. This position paper was worked out after a very broad consultation process, including our membership, but also going beyond, because we asked for input from several stakeholders outside from the membership of IFOAM Organics Europe. We really wanted to emphasize with this position paper that it has to be recognized that organic production takes place in a very contaminated world with the omnipresence of pesticides, which have, of course, a direct effect on organic production that organic producers and all stakeholders have to tackle somehow. Yeah, this is a summary of what the conclusion was on the basis of the study published by FIBL, that synthetic pesticides, artificial fertilizers, herbicides widely used by conventional production, and not only agriculture but other industries as well, can be really found in all compartments of our environment: the air, our soils, surface and undersurface water, so really everywhere, and that many of the pesticides that are sold and used throughout Europe pop up somewhere else, different from the point of application, and it has really severe consequences regarding organic production. We used also information received from EOCC, which is the European Organic Certifiers Council. They also carried out a study which showed that a significant proportion, about 43%, of residue cases identified by CBs and CAs in their membership was found to be originated from the environment somehow. 18% of these cases was the result of spray drift, 8% derived from contact with contaminated soil, water. So it happened in the field, and it could be found that they were unavoidable and outside of the farmer's responsibility, and only 17% derived from post-harvest contamination transferred by contaminated machinery or equipment, which of course could have been avoidable by taking appropriate precautionary measures on the operator level. So the next big chapter of our position paper is about the organic background a bit, to put the whole issue in context. I was mentioning already that the organic regulation 848 is the basic regulation, and also has implications and requirements on how to handle pesticide residues. There are these Article 28 and 29 that specifically sets measures and steps for operators as well as for CBs, what procedures have to be followed in case of presence of non-allowed substances in organic products. But as I mentioned already in this slide, that this was reached as a compromise during the legislative process, and that is the reason why the Commission included a paragraph in the regulation that the implementation of these articles have to be assessed until 2025, and on the basis of the results of this assessment, it will be decided if there is a need for further legislative proposals for better harmonization. So that's why we were in a hurry with this position paper to get already input for this report and assessment. We made a summary about what the current situation is within member states on the level of operators as well as CBs and CAs. So it is tackled in the new regulation, but it was also included in the old one. However, under the new regulation, it is much more emphasized that on the operator level, appropriate and proportionate precautionary measures have to be implemented and put in place. And also the handling of pesticide residues have been regulated also in the old regulation. However, since many years, the handling of organic products with pesticide residues was quite diverse within Europe. That was the situation until now, and now we are assessing a bit the situation under the current regulation. Our position paper gives a detailed picture about what the regulation says about the management of residue findings. The first level of actions are on the operator level, and what has to be done is regulated, as I said, in Article 27 and 28. We produced this flow chart to demonstrate in detail what are the necessary steps that operators have to follow and go through. So just to go through it here also, it is very important that the operator must have well-established and implemented precautionary measures, and it has to be updated from time to time and assessed by him or herself if are still appropriate and proportionate according to the current situation and the activities carried out. In case the operator has a suspicion based on the presence of a non-authorized substance in an organic product, it is important that the operator has to identify and separate the product concerned and block any kind of sales or further use until the suspicion is eliminated. And as a first step, the operator may start an own internal assessment procedure. It is important that this internal check, let's say, must be verified and acknowledged by the CB and the CA and it has to be checked during the inspection and control of the CBs and CAs from time to time. So it has to be kept maintained. After this self-assessment or self-check has been carried out, there are, of course, two ways to go further, to step further. In the first case, when the operator's internal procedures lead to a verifiable decision, it is possible that the suspicion is eliminated on the operator level, so by the operator himself. Then the operator must put records on the case and has to document what was the reason that led to the elimination of the suspicion. It can, in this case, it's also possible that the operator relies on documents received from the supplier, but of course it's very important that it has to be proven and well-based. These records have to be made available for the control body, of course, during regular inspection or upon request. So this is the case when the product can be released and can be used or marketed as organic without any specific further intervention of the CB. It is a possibility given by the regulation. The other way at this level is when the suspicion is substantiated. So it means that the finding can be really connected to a non-compliance. So this is suspected by the operator. Then the product stays blocked and the operator has to notify immediately its control body or control authority. In this case, this is the level when the investigation and further assessment has to be carried on. If we go a step back, when the operator cannot clarify within the scope of its own procedure if the suspicion can be eliminated or not, it results that again, the operator has to immediately notify the CB or CA that goes further with its procedures. In this level and in this respect, we wanted to emphasize those principles that we propose for all stakeholders to respect. We found it very important because in some of these statements or questions, there was how to say, a conflict with the Commission, with the legislator, if they acknowledge that these steps or elements can be really applied according to the new regulation. We found that it is very important to emphasize that the operator have the responsibility and the possibility to conduct his own checks before a substantiated suspicion is established. It is also important that the internal check can be guided by the operator's own internal procedures, so it is not something governed by the CB. However, it is very important that it is verified by the CB on a regular basis. We wanted also to emphasize the possibility that this verification can follow. So for this assessment, the operator can use guidance tools that are available within the sector, that are developed by stakeholders based on experiences with investigation and well-based scientific results. We wanted to emphasize, because it was quite interesting, that the Commission questioned this possibility, let's say, that in the course of the self-assessment of the operator, he's entitled to collect necessary information from the suppliers. About a year ago, Commission had statements that there is no possibility for the operator to enter into direct contact with its suppliers, because the whole assessment has to be done through the involvement of CBs, and also CBs and competent authorities can communicate to each other through the office system. So, but thanks to the position paper and the many advocacy work by IFOAM Organics Europe and other stakeholders, now the Commission moved towards accepting this possibility, of course. We also set the principle that the operator has to notify the presence to the CB, CA if there is a substantiated suspicion, or if the suspicion cannot be eliminated immediately. And if the suspicion can be eliminated by the operator itself, it's very important that he or she has to document the results and the reason for why and how got to this conclusion before the product can be marketed as organic. It is the task of the CB and CA to verify during regular controls if all the cases handled by the operator itself are adequately documented, and the suspicion has been eliminated on well-based, proven, valid grounds. Going into a bit of more practical examples, we wanted to collect cases in disposition papers which can be served as examples when the operator might withdraw the suspicion on its own, and of course when the cases are and circumstances are well documented. It is very important to emphasize that these items or these examples are not ones that automatically lead to the elimination of suspicion. These can be examples where the operator might conclude that the problem, the presence, is not coming from non-compliers, however, from other sources. These are examples of possible sources, but still it has to be proven and documented by the operator. So such examples are when the substance detected occurs naturally in the product or derives from the processing technique. Also, it can lead to such elimination where the substance detected is used again. So no, I would express it in a different way. When a substance detected is used against a disease which is absolutely not existent in the crop species in question, it may lead also the suspicion that probably it's not coming from direct treatment. So it may help the operator to assess the case by itself. It can be also an example when the substance detected is not allowed in the crop species in question, of course, considering all circumstances, also that the authorization of certain pesticides can vary between countries. It's also there are very different situations within and outside of the EU. So all these factors have to be assessed and investigated properly, of course. There can be also proven cases of false positive laboratory results. There are pesticide residues deriving from environmental pollutions, deriving from persistent substances. There have been examples in the past also when the detection of a substance derived from human sanitary measures and products used, or from the treatment of water. And there might be cases of proven and well-documented cases of systematic and avoidable contamination from neighbors, overspray, short and long distance spray drift. So when we go through and leave behind the operator level, then comes the procedures that must be followed by the CB or CA, and this is regulated in the Basic Act by Article 29. Of course, in these cases, it is possible that the CB or CA receives substantiated information about presence of non-authorized substances from many sources. It may come from the operator, as we saw in the previous flowchart. It may come from other players of the supply chain, and it might happen that the CB detects the presence on its own during control activities. Then in this case, the CB, of course, as a first step, must check the validity of the information received, must verify the volume affected, if it can be narrowed down to a consignment or a lot or a product of the operator. Then the CB and CAA, according to the new regulation, must instruct the operator to provisionally block the consignment, so the lot affected, until the end of the investigations. And an official investigation has to be started with the aim to determine the source and the cause of the pesticide residue presence. After the investigation is carried out with the required care, there might be different outcomes here also, of course. It may happen that the CB establishes that the unauthorized substance have been used, or it might happen that the operator has not implemented well-established precautionary measures. And it also may happen that the operator has not taken measures that had been previously required by the CB. All these cases can lead to the conclusion that the concerned product must be withdrawn from the organic market, so cannot be used or sold as organic anymore. And we might also maintain the possibility that the CB or CA establishes the absence of non-compliance, so proves that it doesn't come from as a result of a non-compliance, or proves that he or the CB is not able to identify specifically the source and the cause of the presence. In such cases, it's a possible outcome that the concerned product can be still marketed as organic. What are the principles that we propose to be considered on CB level for these investigations? We suggest that the investigation should determine the source and the cause of the presence of non-allowed products or substances, to ensure that the operators comply with the requirements and have not used non-authorized products or substances, and to ensure that the operators have taken the proportionate and appropriate precautionary measures required by the regulations. We also recommend, we have in these principles and recommendations that the investigation should be proportionate to the suspected non-compliance, as the regulation is talking about that the investigation has to be completed as soon as possible within a reasonable period. However, it has to be as expensive and thorough as possible. So it is always a responsibility of the CB to consider the two, and also to take into account the durability of the product and the complexity of the case, in order to avoid unnecessary financial burden to be put on the operator and the supply chain by the CB. I think this is the most controversial and most difficult, one of the most difficult elements of this regulation, to find a proper balance that can be still accepted by the competent authority and the Commission as well. And we also want to emphasize the principle that in case the source and the cause cannot be determined conclusively, the CB should be able to establish the most probable cause and the source and close the investigation with this conclusion. So we want to avoid that an investigation really would be maintained and carried out for months and months without a real result, just because it cannot be very specifically determined and prove the exact source and cause of a contamination. We also mentioned in our position paper that there is a need from the sector to develop some decision supporting guidance tools that can be both used by the operators and the CBs and CAs during their assessments and investigations. Of course, it's not the purpose of IFOAM Organics Europe to develop such guidance tools itself. However, we want the Commission to acknowledge that these guidance tools can be developed and used by stakeholders as well. We know already quite a few initiatives that are targeting to develop such guidance tools. We just wanted to set a few criteria that these guidance tools should be respected. There is an expectation from stakeholders to compile the most common detected residues, their origin, and the crop species in which they occur. We think it is very necessary to set some general criteria for the acceptance of such guidance tools and to assess the usability of them, that these should be based on the latest available agronomic knowledge and based on existing scientific studies. They should consider and be based on information on frequency of contamination and the respect of national or regional conditions and characteristics in the environment. We also require the Commission to acknowledge that during the assessment of residue cases, there should be a possibility to consider the processing factors when applicable and also on very valid grounds, of course. And for us and for our members, it is very important that such guidance tools, if they are usable and developed, should be available for operators and CBCAs as well, free of charge to reach to a level playing field, let's say. So about the residue case, our position paper and the work have been done by IFOAM Organics Europe. I wanted to present this, and now I'm again available for your questions in the time left. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah. We have 12 more questions. So shall we start with the Q&A? Shall we continue, actually?
Yes, I would say so. I think we stopped at the question from I don't remember, Leah, did we treat the Do Commission have detailed and specific information on Annex 1 from an anonymous attendee at 11:08? We should start from there if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
It's probably still related to the first part of the presentation, though.
Yes, I guess so. But the Commission have not given more details or more specifications on products that are included in Annex 1. So as far as I know, up to the stage when these products are produced, under the scope of the new regulation, it is possible to control and certify them. However, the regulation does not consider any further use that you mentioned in your question, for example, pharmaceutical or cosmetic use. So these processes are already not under the scope of the regulation. Yeah, there are some technical questions following. The recordings of the webinar, according to my knowledge, will be available. Yeah, the next question. Can we get the certificate for one product? Oh, sorry, because it is jumping as someone is adding a new question. The screen is jumping. So can we get the certificate for one product if the other product on the same plot land is tested positive for pesticide residues if there is a buffer zone? I think that if it can be proven to the control body that the products are well separated and cannot contaminate one the other, it is possible still that the product not affected is still certified. However, I think it's also very important, and it requires a case-by-case assessment, that what was the result, what was the cause of the positive result. I think it's completely different if it was a non-compliance, so a treatment done by the operator, or a contamination. The next question, when EOCC claims that 43% of residue cases are derived from cross-contamination, avoidable or non-avoidable, this claim is based on the assessment by EOCC's member CBs. Many CBs, however, do not perform real investigations of the origin of residues, claiming that they come from spray drift or other forms of cross-contamination is always the easiest answer when a CB wants to protect its clients. Yes, I completely agree. And I think this is one of the reasons why the Commission is really would like to see real enforcement, and would like to see a real strict interpretation of the rules, because we have to admit that there are differences among CBs, how properly they go through the official investigation steps. We from our members, we also get information that it is very different in different member states and by different CBs, that while one of them has really well-based, documented and thorough investigation, there are some others who are just easily come to the conclusion that the pesticide residue is coming from contamination, and then we close the investigation. So yeah, I think this is the huge question about the implementation of the regulation, and that's why we also think that it is not enough to publish position papers and guidance tools and documents, but real training and dissemination of knowledge is necessary. However, it is also the responsibility of the competent authorities and the commissions to have a good supervision and surveillance as well. So I completely agree. I have to find the next question, sorry. What is the suggestion for operators to prevent the residue from the pesticides in the organic products? Even the grower group has implemented it without the use of pesticides. For example, doing the pesticide residue test before the shipment can be acceptable to the EU. If the operator doing the pesticide residue test before the shipment, it is the same. Is there any other residue that needs to be residue tested other than pesticides and fertilizer residue, such as other chemical ingredients that can have an impact on the organic status of the product, where the operator can know the threshold limit of the pesticide residues? This is a very complex set of questions. I want to emphasize that currently, as I mentioned, there is no threshold limit for pesticide residues under the EU regulation. Every detection, every positive result has to be investigated carefully with the same thoroughness. So there are no threshold limits, neither action levels that are sometimes mentioned by the stakeholders. I think it depends also on the experiences of the CB, what kind of residue testing analysis is carried out by. It's always a decision based on the situation. It can be different if it is a routine sampling and testing, or it is a targeted one in order to clarify or find some non-compliances about which the CB has kind of suspicion. Basically, the Commission gives guidelines in this document what kind of analysis has to be carried out in case of imports. However, within the EU, it can be very it can vary according to the case, I guess. If the operator before the shipment can be acceptable, yes. This question about if the pesticide residue test is done by the shipment, yes, of course, it is also a kind of precautionary measure by many operators, many stakeholders to carry out tests to be on the safe side. Of course, it is acceptable and it is an acknowledged tool. However, it is very important to emphasize that only the non-existence of pesticide residues in a certain lot is not enough to prove the organic origin. So all traceability and other kind of information behind must be, of course, well-based and must have to comply with the regulations requirements. I'm completely lost among the questions at this point. Clara, if you can find anything relevant, because I cannot follow which ones have been answered already and which questions have not been touched yet. Can a product considered organic where the pesticide residue level is about 0.02 milligram per kilogram and the source cannot be determined? I think after the complexity of the investigations and the assessment that I showed you, this is not enough information to decide. That is the simplest answer I can give. Maybe I missed this point. What was the reaction of the EU Commission to the position paper? As far as I understood, at least the operator has now the opportunity to support the investigation with its input. But what about the other points? Application of processing factor, how is your feeling? Yeah, thank you for your question, because we really think that with our position paper and with our connected advocacy work, we have a real success to move the Commission from its previous position to the current one. It needed a lot of background discussion with them, to be honest. But I remember, for example, during this CDG, the Civil Dialogue Group discussion a year before, the Commission's statements were completely different from the ones that were given at the end of this year, for example. Now they clearly state that they accept that the operator has the opportunity, the possibility to have own assessment and the right to eliminate the suspicion under its own responsibility. Of course, they always emphasize that it has to be well documented and has to be concluded on valid grounds. So it is always emphasized them, but they also acknowledge that it is possible that after the elimination of such suspicion, it might occur that it's not necessary to notify the CB and the product can be marketed as organic. In the last CDG, and no, even before, the Commission issued 2 guidance letters. Probably you know that it is possible for stakeholders, for organizations, for CBs, competent authorities to ask questions to the Commission, where in their answers, the Commission gives detailed guidance and detailed interpretation. And they published or issued 2 papers in this topic, about this topic, that will be included at the end of the year in this frequently asked questions document that I mentioned previously. And it was stated by the Commission that processing factors can be used during the assessment. So I think there is really a huge move in the position of the Commission. And we already also discussed that they have no opposition against our position paper. So basically we are on the same grounds.
Yeah, I think if we go in the time order, I still see one.
Yes, we are a bit over.
Even if you're kind, 28 and 29, according to the EU regulation, and also documented the third country control bodies. Do you read that from Karin Hindemith?
I'm sorry, I cannot find it.
Even if article.
Even if you're.
I think it was an error. Even if article.
Yeah, 28 and 29, according to EU regulation, and also documented, the third country control bodies get so much pressure from the EU that the declarations are not accepted. The EU lacks an understanding of how organic is produced and what conditions farmers are exposed to from conventional agriculture. There are no masses of studies of drift. How does the EU respond to IFOAM on this issue? Why is it not accepted? Yeah, so if we are talking about third countries and imports, I have to admit that the Commission seems to be more stricter than in the EU. And they always refer to the fact that through the office notifications, they require much more, they receive much more notifications on import products than from products deriving from the EU. And I still think that some more advocacy is needed, that if we have the compliance regime in place, the same requirements, the same rules have to be respected within the EU and outside of the EU as well. However, of course, it has to be somehow supported and proven by the fact that the control bodies really operate in the right manner in certain countries as well, and they have the same enforcement as within the EU. But IFOAM Organics Europe is still carrying on with advocacy, and this is one of our focus points in our further advocacy work, to acknowledge, to have the Commission be on our side, acknowledging that now they seem to be putting more obstacles to imports than within international production and sales.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interfering. Just to double check, if you answer the question of Roman Kucherenko about the phosphonic acid contamination, are there any changes?
Are there any changes to make phosphonic acid contamination without positive being found to make them keep organic status without investigation? If the farm has these results year by year on the same fields. Yeah, I think the case with phosphonic acid is quite a typical example when it should be acknowledged that the operator has the possibility to eliminate suspicion based on own assessment. So, but again, it has to be very well documented. And I think so many of the operators have years of experience with these cases. So I think it's also very important that the control body verifies the assessment of the operator and they keep both parties, these cases well documented among their records. I hope this was an answer to your question. I find a new question about even downgrading of products with the reason repeated findings, no proof of an infringement without any legal base. Yeah, I think this is really a twofold question, if I understand your concerns right, that on the one hand, there is a fear that the operator will routinely refer to own assessment and repeated findings that it's coming from contamination and it's not coming from treatment or non-compliance. However, it is also a very easy way for control bodies to downgrade the products. So I think we also have to emphasize during our advocacy work that the very strict and very narrow-minded interpretation going always to the result that the product is downgraded and decertified is not acceptable from the control bodies or control authorities as well. So I think we have to make pressure on them also to complete their investigations on a very sophisticated and well-based manner. That is the position of IFOAM Organics Europe, to not let the operator, but as well as the also the CBs and CAs to just to refer to an easy conclusion and to be on the safe side. I hope this answer also gives some orientation point for you. I don't know, I hope I got through the questions and I touched all of them.
Sorry for interruption, maybe I'm mistaken, just I'm not sure if you have already answered the questions with regard to the plant-based, herbal, traditional, pharmaceutical, full cosmetic use. This one, and they're also related to the food and cosmetic purposes, also related with Annex 1 question. I think they're similar. It's the similar topic. I think it was
I think the first one I read out and the answer, some products are being used for food as well, cosmetic purpose. So should we consider under category D or Annex 1? I think the Annex 1 gives a very specific list of products. So if you find a product listed in Annex 1, then it has to be treated under it. However, I know that there are some, for example, essential oils, which can be used also for the purpose of food. Then it is considered under processed agricultural products for the use of food. I know it is quite a difficult issue within the EU as well. So for control bodies, sometimes are not cannot make a difference between the two categorization, because even they do not know what the processing purpose is if an operator sells a raw material. However, I think it makes also quite difficult for CBs to tackle this problem, because we have CBs have very little room for maneuver because of the model of the certificates to be issued. You know, you have to put the product certified under one of the categories which are in the model of the certificate. However, if they do not fit, it is not possible to use anything else but the so-called box 9, which is still there for such purposes. And I think that all products that are listed under Annex 1 will go to this box of the certificate. So I'm sorry if I'm not really clear about this answer, because I'm not a technician of a CB. However, I'm aware a bit about this problem from the perspective of the issuance of the electronic certificates, that some products cannot be fit into the categories that are indicated on the layout of the certificate.
Thank you, Leah.
So,
oh, sorry. You still had something to complement? I'm just making order with the questions. So far we have other 4 questions. 2 are from John Hosen, which is one, we see that import companies only give positive releases after negative results. And then we have another one when EOCC claims that 43% of residues cases are derived. So maybe you can, there's been a...
Yeah, but I think this question I already tackled, but I see that Johan copied this one and also another one together, but I'm unfortunately not able to translate these Dutch comments.
Maybe he can, he can send again a clear answer, a clear question.
On my question. 1140.
I don't see
Where
it
is the
either.
one from 1148? I'm very
Maybe,
sorry.
John, if you could please send again the question, and in the meanwhile, we will move.
But please restrict only the question that was not touched already, because we are going over the time, I'm afraid. Okay, I read out this next one from Karin. Is it possible to take action against the decision of a third country inspection? These do not issue a decision, only an email. I think maybe you think about from the operator side, a decision is made by a third country inspection body, and they issue a decision by email. I think if it is a control body that has accreditation and recognition, they must have procedures put in place to handle complaints and appeals against certification decisions. So of course it must be possible. One, it's still not clear about phosphonic acid. Did I understand you right? That in case of any findings of the substance, the investigate. It always jumps when, when a new question is coming, sorry. The investigation must be done in any case, even it has been done year by year, yes or no. It depends, it always depends. So it never can be said that a phosphonic acid residue case can be automatically closed without any further investigation. If it is something that happens with an operator year by year, it's repeated, and it was once proven, for example, at the first or second investigation was closed with the conclusion that it doesn't come from treatment or with non-authorized products, but contamination from previous years, then I think referring to these previous conclusions, it can be assessed and closed by the operator, and the suspicion can be eliminated. But we never can say that phosphonic acid cases can be closed like this. And it's very important for the whole comprehension of this issue that automatism can never be used. I mean, we can refer to previous experiences when it is proven and well documented. And we have really valid grounds to refer to these previous experiences still now. We see that import companies only give positive releases after negative results. I have to digest this, sorry. Give positive releases after negative results, and only then purchase the product. What happens to the products with positive results? And is the relevant CBCA investigating based on these reports and notifications from the exporters? Are exporters also obliged to report so that an official investigation can also be carried out, or can the batches be released after self-examination? I think I cannot catch this question. I'm very sorry. Is it possible to allow the people who are putting questions to explain a little bit, because it is very difficult to understand. sometimes.
Yes, we should. We
Yeah.
should.
And I also understand that it's very difficult to write down such
I will check
questions.
functions if we can unmute Johan to elaborate more on the question.
Be able to talk now, no?
In the meantime, if you, yeah,
Yeah,
and Johan, can you put the question?
Am I in?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you, Johan, for giving a bit of...
I'm Johan Hoese from Skal Biocontrol. We are working a lot with import companies, and what they are doing, they are trying to buy products, and they do their own analysis. So they use a surveyor to take samples from a particular batch, and they only buying that batch when they have negative analysis reports. So that's then positive for them. But what happened with the positive analysis reports? So they are not buying it from the exporter in the land of origin. Are they obliging to report it to their control body, and so that are doing their own self-investigation by themselves and then release it again as organic, or should it also be blocked and should the control body do the investigation? So that was the main. There were several questions inside, but can you explain that one for me or for us?
Yeah, I try at least. Thank you for the clarification. I think I know what you mean now. I think when from any source the operator has received information of a pesticide residue presence, it has to start this procedure under the regulation. So has to carry out own assessment, and if the suspicion cannot be eliminated or proven, then the operator has to notify the CB, of course. So it cannot happen that a positive result is just hidden from the system if they receive it, even if then it results in that a certain exporter is not buying that affected lot. So it has to go through the normal procedure set by the regulation.
Okay, and that means that also Article Article 28.2 is also used in other areas of the world. So in South America, in Asia, for example, already.
Already not, but when they will be under the compliance regime put in place, that I think, yes, of course, they have to comply with the EU regulations, so it has to be effective also in third countries.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's why we have to push the Commission to accept the possibility of self-assessment and to go through this procedure as it is possible within the EU to guarantee it in third countries as well.
Okay. And
in
also
my understanding, it is very important from third country CVs and operators as well.
Okay, thank you. And there's also they are taking supervision about that, the control bodies, about positive results given by companies who were trying to sell that. So they have all the information, or they should have all the information.
Yes, CBs has to be informed, at least even if the operators carries out the own assessment, and then releases the product, I think all the records and documents has to be presented to the CB at the next inspection or upon request. So I think the CB always have to be aware of these procedures put in place on operator level as well, and to convene if they see something is not compliant.
Okay, thank you.
There is a very specific question about the processing factors. To be honest and to cut short my answer, I wouldn't go into details in such technical details because I'm not an expert. It is a possibility to use processing factors, of course, in case of processed products, when the processing technique and the procedure may result in the concentration of residues as well. But I can share with you after the webinar the latest interpretation letter given by the Commission on this topic, because they put specific links to existing documents on how to apply processing factors. And I hope this will help Roman, who asked this question, this very detailed question, if it's a good and acceptable answer.
I guess we are done with the questions.
There is a last one from Christine. I think she means to say take action against a decision. There are no official notice by the CBs, only via email it is communicated that the product is downgraded. In the EU, receive an official notice on which you can appeal or complain. I think it must be some possibility to take actions through the competent authority of the third country, if there is, or however, because at least it has to be recognized on the, how to say, the national level also. I'm not really aware of such cases, so I don't know how it could be done. But of course, within the EU, if these procedures are not handled correctly by the CB, there is always the possibility to make complaints towards the competent authority who is supervising or surveilling. It is also has to be declared by the CB which accreditation body is accrediting it. So I think complaints might be submitted to the accreditation body as well, who has to deal with it, or at least help how to go further. I know for an operator it is quite difficult to approach the Commission directly from a third country. This was the question about, because the final supervisor is the Commission, of course, in these cases.
Okay, time is flying. We are at the end of our session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate at the end of the webinar, we appreciate if you complete our post-webinar surveys. They will be sent to your emails after the event. And for those who is managed to upload it, to send those surveys, we can provide a link to all webinar materials. Thank you. I also thank you for your participation, and special thanks to my co-moderator, to Clara, and our trainer, of course, Leah Bauer. Thank you so much. Wishing you a lovely day, and hopefully to see you all at BioFach.
Thank you very much. See you
Thank you
soon.
very much. Also for the very active audience, thank you. And if with any of our questions. You went beyond my knowledge. I'm very happy to receive emails, and maybe I can guide you through other supporting documents or experts, or answer your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.